Hey guys, I'm gonna teach you about trend line. So a lot of people ask me why do I learn trend lines? It's because of a few purposes. The first purpose is because you want to buy the dip, right? So every time when there's a trend and you don't know where to buy in and it's like going up and down, going up and down. If you draw a trend line, you can always buy at the dip. When the price dips to the trend line, you can buy it at the trend line, so it's more at a discount, right? So this is the proper buying the dip. All right. Next is because of trend trading. So you do not want to go against the trend, right? So when the trend is like, let's say, an uptrend, and then you are looking to short, that's obviously a wrong thing to do because you wouldn't want to short when the trend is going up. That's like going against the trend, and it's a very dangerous thing to do unless you are a trend unless you are going against the trend and you are trying to play the reversal pattern, right? So unless you are very pro at reading the market, my advice to you is to follow the trend. So drawing the trend line makes you realize that you are in the trend also, and let's say you are in for the long term and it is a uptrend. So even if like let's say it's like bounced a bit, you can still buy in here as you know that you will still go up and then it's still in the uptrend. Only when the trend changes then you can exit out of the position. So next one is trend breaking. So let's say you know that you draw a trend line and you can see that there's a trend going on, and let's say you see that there's a break in the trend. That's when you know when to exit your position, and that's where trend lines can be very useful in your analysis as well. And lastly, is to determine whether the trend line is too steep or too gradual to determine whether the trend will continue. A too steep trend line means that the trend has been going up too fast, too far, and you know that this kind is like not very sustainable in the long run. So you would prefer something that's more gradual. And if you see something that's more gradual, you know that the trend is probably gonna last for a longer time. So you will position yourself according to that. Right, so how do you draw a proper trend line? So trend lines, the first rule is to always have uh 3 points in your trend line. So let me just type it right here. So uh minimally 3 points in trend line. So what I mean by that is that in your trend line there has to be minimal 3 touches. So when you draw a line, it's always a combination of 2 points, right? So it's the same for trends, right? When prices touch your trend line, if you only have 2 touches in your 2 touches of the trend line by your prices, then it's not a strong trend. It's just a potential trend line. It's not a proper trend line because you need at least 3 touches to say that, oh, this is actually a trend that is going on. So only when there's 3 touches, one, two, and three, then you can say that, oh, this is a proper trend line, right? If not, it is just a potential trend line, which might be useful sometimes as well, right? Your potential trend line might be useful, but most of the time, if you are trying to draw a proper trend line, 3 points is the minimal that you should gun for. All right, next, a trend line should be drawn from below if it's an uptrend and drawn from above if it's a downtrend. So, this makes sense because when you are looking at trends, like I said, one of the need of a trend line is to so-called buy the dip, right? And when you draw it from below, that's when you can actually so-called buy the dip, right? If you put a trend line above in the uptrend, then it doesn't make sense because it doesn't guide you whatsoever as to where the prices will rebound, right? So when I say buy the dip, it just means that you are trying to see where the prices will bounce from, and if you are going to draw it above, then this line is literally going to be useless unless you are just going to use it to tell the trend, which is mostly not the case because most people use the trend line to give them a guide as to where to buy in for their prices, right? So definitely if the trend is going up, you should always draw a line from below to for uptrend line. It should always be from the bottom. You should always link the closing prices. As for uptrend, as for a downtrend in this case, it should always be from the top. You can see it's drawn from the top all the way to the bottom, and this is in the downtrend, right? If you think which stock is going down so far is Alibaba is in pretty deep shit. All right, so Now the next rule for trend line, sorry, let me just type it here again. So the second point should be that trend lines, sorry, uptrend lines should be drawn from below, downtrend lines should be drawn from above. Right. Next, our next rule is that trend lines should not cut through candle bodies and should cut through as little wicks as possible. Right, so what I mean by that is that, okay, firstly, to understand this point, right, we have to know what is a candlestick body and what is the wick, right? So if you are drawing a candlestick, right, and then this is what is a normal candlestick chart, right? So if it's a green candle, right, if it's a green candle, means that this is the opening price, this is the closing price, this is the highest price, this is the lowest price. And if it's a red candle, then this will be the opening, this will be the close, this is the highest price, this is the lowest price, right? So what does that have to do with trend lines? So if you think about it, if you are going to draw a trend line, we are predicting where prices have been to at the lowest point, right? So in this case, if we are going to cut through the candlesticks, right, imagine like this is the candle and we are going to just cut through this candle, right, then there's no point in this trend line because you are trying to find where prices will bounce, right? And in this case, prices didn't bounce here, prices more or less bounce either here or here, right? There's a debate why some people like to draw it through the wicks, right? Some people like to draw it through the close, right? Some people think that the close price is whereby the price is the most prominent, right? When the price is at the closing is the most prominent, this is where the so-called lowest open inverted close inverted commas price is. And some people think that, oh, the lowest and highest is where the wicks are, so we should definitely not even cut the wicks, but and we should just draw the trend line based on where the wicks touch, right? So but the thing is, drawing where the wick starts is difficult because not every time you can find a trend line whereby it's nicely cutting through the wicks at only. So sometimes I think that cutting through the wicks is possible, just minimize it. So in this case of dollar yen, I'm just going to demonstrate to you how I would draw a trend line. So in this case here, I would draw a very nice trend line up here, and you can see that it fulfills all our let me just change the color to green to show there is an uptrend line, right? So it fulfills all our rules here. So there's minimally 3 points, so there's 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, 5 points, right? So this is a very good trend line because it has 5 points. Next, the uptrend line should be drawn from below. Yep, this is uptrend and the uptrend line is drawn from below. And a trend line should not cut through candle bodies and cut through as little wicks as possible. So the thing here is maybe I cut through a little bit of the wicks. In fact, this is more of touching the wicks, and I definitely did not cut through any candle bodies. So this is a very good uptrend line. And if you think that this is just a look back bias kind of thing, so in this case, what you think, what is a look back bias? A look back bias is whereby people go back in time and then they draw something and then they say, oh, look, it turned out so well, it turned out so nice, but it's like demonstrated nicely, it's performed nicely, right? It's like nicely sourced, and like when you actually try to do it in real life, it doesn't really happen. Right, so I'll bring you to one of my recent trades, which is dollar yen, which I actually entered based on the trend line. Okay, not the trend line solely, but I did consider in the trend line when I was drawing it. So as you can see, even though this is on the 4 hour, this is on the 1 hour, I entered around here. I entered around here at this dip right here, right? I was gunning for this hit of the trend line. So you can see that in this case, if I were to play out my trade, you can, if I zoom in, you can see that this wick touched exactly at where the trend line would touch in this diagram, which is this week. If I change to the 4 hour to make it clearer, you can see that this candle was the exact one that touched my this buy entry right here, right? So even though I have multiple reasons, right, rate differentials, whether is it priced in, Fed, hawkish, crypto, whatever, right, I did take into account some of the trend line into my technical analysis to enter this trade, right? So your trend line are definitely is definitely something that can aid your trading, right? But definitely do not use it solely. And I would say that more often than not, almost like 95-98%, the trend line is actually useless, right? Why is it useless? Is because you do not know. The trend lines are incredibly subjective, right? So for example, let's say I drew this trend line, right? But then someone else, let's say you who is watching this video, might not agree. You might just draw the trend line from here onwards, right? And if fits the description, right, you can say that, oh, there's minimally 3 points, yup, 1 2 3 4. Uptrend line should be drawn from below, yes. Trend line should not cut through candle body. I mean, this one cuts through a bit more candle wicks, but yeah, it's definitely not cutting through candle body. So it's a valid trend line, and I can't disagree with you. It is a valid trend line, right? So in this case, which trend line will be better, right? So there's no such thing as which trend line is better. It's all very subjective, which is why I say that 95-98% of the time is useless. So what is the 2% or like 5% that's actually useful? That's when you actually have a view of the market. Let's say for me, I think that dollar yen is bullish because of the interest rate differentials, right? Yen is the Bank of Japan has negative interest rates, while a dollar, as you know, Fed is incredibly hawkish. They are going to hike interest rates, and because of that, there's a difference in interest rates. Increase in interest rates will cause appreciation of the currency, so increase appreciation of the dollar, and decrease in interest rates will lead to depreciation of the currency, and in this case yen, right? So definitely for dollar yen, I'm bullish because I'm bullish dollar and I'm bearish yen. So when I put both together, dollar yen, I'm buying the dollar, selling the yen, right? So in this case, I'm already bullish the dollar yen, so I'm just looking for reasons to enter, right? And trend line is just one of the smaller reasons to add to my factors of reasoning, such that it adds to my conviction. Firstly, it is definitely in the uptrend, which supports my macro thesis, right? I'm bullish dollar yen, so uptrend definitely supports my macro thesis. Next, the trend line gives me a better entry, right? If I'm looking at buying dollar yen, I cannot just go in without any stop loss or take profit or buy entry, right? I have to find a place to enter my trade. So in this case, the trend line sets a very nice place for me to enter my trade, which is exactly at where I think it will bounce, right, at the trend line, right? Maybe I'll put it slightly higher in case of manipulation, right? So in this case, that's what happens as well. You can see that it almost didn't touch, but my buy entry was a bit higher than expected, right? So as I said, trend line is something to help you to aid you in trading, but you shouldn't use it solely as with any other technical indicators, as with any other macro indicator as well. If you think that, oh, Fed is hawkish and you should buy dollar, it should never just be a singular view. You should always consider downsides. You should consider like what other factors are supporting your argument, right? And last thing I want to touch about trend lines is the time frame, right? So you can see that this trend line is drawn on the 1 hour time frame, while the BABA trend line is drawn on the daily time frame. So when should I draw my trend line on which time frame, you might ask? So for time frame, it depends on your time frame for trading. So let's say you are a scalper. A scalper means that you enter the market and then you exit really fast in maybe about an hour within the day, or like a few hours, right? In this case, you are definitely not looking at time frames above the 4 hour time frame, right? The longest time frame you should be looking at is the 1 hour time frame, and then you zoom into maybe the 30 minutes or 15 minutes, right? In this case, you should be drawing the trend line on the highest time frame. So in this case, your 1 hour time frame. Oh, why is it so? Right? Imagine you are holding the trade for only a few hours, right? And then you go to like the daily, and then you draw a trend line there, sure, it might be a correct trend line on the daily, right? On the daily, you see that it's bullish, but it doesn't make sense for the day. The day itself might be bearish, right? As you know that the market is fractal, right? So if the daily is bullish, it doesn't mean that the hourly is bullish as well, right? The hourly might be bearish and you might be going against the trend. Or depending on your trading style, you just might not be using the trend to your favor, right? So the trend line should always be used on your highest time frame. To answer the question, it should be always used on your highest time frame of trading. So let's say you are a scalper, it should be maybe used on the 1 hour time frame. If you are a swing trader, it should be maybe used on the daily or weekly time frame, right? If you are an intraday trader, maybe a 4 hour or daily time frame will look good for you as well, right? So based on that, you can draw a proper trend line. But like I said, trend line to me pretty useless, but something to aid on your trading, right? That's all for trend lines.